So we're talking about Part 107, and that's for unmanned aircraft that weigh less than 55 pounds, and for aircraft that aren't going to do things such as carry chemicals, maybe fertilizers or maybe insecticides, and not involved in package delivery. So if you're thinking that Part 107 is going to be for dropping a package off at your front door, that's not what the part is used for. And the way they're regulated is this. The FAA sets some basic requirements. And they say, this is how fast you can fly your unmanned aircraft. This is where you can fly your unmanned aircraft, because you don't want to fly in your airports. So it talks about how you have to view airspace and where you can fly to be safe. Then it says you need to have a pilot that has an unmanned aircraft license. And that's the basic way that Part 107 is structured. But what also happens under Part 107 is there are a lot of uses that are justified by some very strong business cases that you can ask for a waiver for. So for instance, if I want to fly my drone at night and take some pictures of a party I'm having, you need to ask the FAA for a waiver. If I want to fly beyond line of sight, so maybe that's a farmer who has a very expansive field and she'd like to have that drone go from one end of the field to the other and come back, and maybe at the far end you can't see it. Then you have to ask for a waiver. And that's a pretty common process. And roughly the FAA is processing about 1,090 to 1,100 waivers per year when it comes to Part 107. And that's about the base level that we're seeing right now. So it's quite a commonly used section, and it's something that really is the entry point for a new user who has an unmanned vehicle. 88% of all users are asking for that night waiver because there's probably a good business case for flying an unmanned vehicle at night. But the users we surveyed told us that in equally large proportions, they've asked to do things with unmanned aircraft other than night. And if you look at the approval proportion and the approval rate between the two, they're really not equal. So you have a higher chance of getting a night waiver than you do of maybe getting a waiver for flying your vehicle beyond visual line of sight. And to me, that tells us a couple of things. First, it could well be that the FAA has a very streamlined process for granting night waivers. It's well understood, the risks are well understood, and they feel comfortable granting those in higher proportion. But other things could also be happening as well. It could be that other types of operations present far more risk, and that while the FAA is staffed at a certain level to go ahead and process 1,100 waiver applications a year, that the ones that are harder, that involve riskier operations, that involve things with more chance in them and chances of injury, they take a longer time to scrutinize. And so maybe we're talking maybe a year or so for some of those. And that skews the proportions a little bit. But there's another interesting thing that we found in the interviews we've had with industry executives, and it's this. Because there is the public perception, and that being the unmanned aircraft operator perception, that it's really tough to use the Part 107 process, that they don't understand the process, that operators are going out and they're doing these things without regulatory approval. And that has us concerned. Putting together a Part 107 application is kind of a good news, bad news story. So the good news is you can go to the internet and you can find literally hundreds of examples of Part 107 applications that were approved. And you can do a cut and paste operation and create an application based on something the FAA has approved already. The downside of that is that in this process, you're not learning anything. So you may have a wonderful application that checks all of the boxes, but there's a really strong chance when you use these internet applications, you don't know what you just agreed to with the FAA. That is a regulatory concern, that's an industry concern, and that's something that suggests we need to change the education process around.